It's Adrienne Lawrence, and of course, it's TYT's The Conversation. And this time, I have for us Pete Hardin. He's a former judge advocate in the U.S. Marine Corps deputy DA, and he also happens to be running for DA in Orange County. Thanks for joining us, Pete.
Great to be with you, Adrienne. Thanks for having me.
Yes, so we saw last week 10 commuters suffer gunshot wounds when there was a shooting in a Brooklyn subway system. And so we saw the week before, or 2 weeks before, at least, a shooting in Sacramento. It seems that there are more and more shootings going on. And I'm sure this is in part COVID precautions being lifted, but what's really going on here?
I think we're seeing the ineffectiveness of the traditional tactics that we've had at combating gun violence and preventing crime. Look, we can talk about gun restriction laws all we want, but and those can be effective in a lot of ways, and we can talk about that. But the fact is that by the time we have victims calling 911 and defendants are being rushed to the victims are being rushed to the hospital, defendants are being prosecuted in court, it's too late. We have poured resources into reactionary responses to crime, and it's time we start getting ahead of these issues and looking at creative ways to solve them on statewide and national levels.
Yeah, definitely something needs to be done, because it really seems these mass shootings, these weekly shootings, these all of a sudden just suddenly shootings, not only are we becoming numb to them, but that they're a particularly American phenomena. And that tells us, if other nations don't have these problems, that this is something unique to us. Why do you think that is?
It is unique to us. I mean, we could get into a lengthy academic conversation about the Second Amendment here, and the uniquely American issues that lead to this kind of behavior. But I think the important thing now is to acknowledge that we have to massively invest in violence prevention efforts that are community-based. It's not rocket science, Adrienne, right? We know the things that reduce crime. In the year 2022, we have the data and the social science to tell us so clearly that community-based job training, health support, substance use treatment, even things like after-school programs and literacy programs for at-risk youth can make such a huge difference in crime prevention in our communities. And that's the kind of thing that we need to turn to, along with violence interruption programs. And there are some great models for that across the country.
And so do you know what, or can you speak to one of those models that you find to be particularly effective?
Yeah, absolutely. There's one called Advance Peace. I want to acknowledge to your viewers that I have nothing to do with the organization. But the Brookings Institution found that Advance Peace contributed to something like a 20% drop in gun homicides in Stockton. And I think over 20% drop in Sacramento over a 2-year period. So you can check it out online. I would encourage people to do that. Programs like that need more investment and support.
Yeah, it definitely seems that something needs to be done, without a doubt. And also, it definitely seems that there is a debate going on as far as it concerns the Second Amendment and what is our right versus what rights or benefits, opportunities, privileges should be curbed for the better of all. Where would you say things stand right now with that whole Second Amendment debate?
Look, the vast majority of Americans are in support of common sense gun legislation. And the studies tell us pretty clearly that states that have such legislation are safer. And what's more, states that are buffeted by, in other words, states that are surrounded by other states that have the same type of legislation have even lower rates of gun violence and significantly suicide by gun. Here in California, for example, we have myriad gun laws, and death by suicide with a gun is significantly lower here than it is in other places. But we are surrounded by other states that don't have necessarily the same types of laws that we do. So, look, the Second Amendment is here to stay. I don't think it's worth really wasting time on that. It's what are we going to do to keep ourselves safe and our families and our kids safe? How are we going to invest in reentry programs as well, so that people returning to our communities can reintegrate into society in a positive and productive way? 95% of people in prison will one day be free, and we've got to invest in rehabilitation and support in our correctional institutions.
Absolutely. It seems that the United States also has that unique problem of being a carceral state. And so when we stop putting capitalism first, if that'll ever come, then perhaps we can start investing in our people. And I know that you are looking to invest in the people of Orange County as you run for district attorney. What motivated you to essentially take this route?
When I was a young prosecutor, Adrian, as a DA, I saw people recycling through the criminal justice system time and again for the same set of underlying reasons. The crimes may have differed slightly, but it was always due to mental illness or addiction or homelessness. Until we recognize those as the public health crises that they are, and treat them as such rather than just issues to be treated, dealt with in the criminal justice system. Until we recognize that we cannot simply lock up our country's problems and prosecute away deep societal ills, and we are never going to climb out of the gross over-incarceration that we have in this country. And your viewers should know that, we Americans constitute 5% of the world's population, and yet we house 25%. 1 in 4 people who are incarcerated in the world are housed here in the United States. If incarceration were the answer to public safety, we'd be the safest nation in the world, but clearly we're not. We need modern solutions to the modern problems we're facing. Orange County is the 5th or 6th largest county in America, is a great place to create a model for sustainable justice reform.
And I would definitely think that people down there, they might welcome it. I don't necessarily know, but in terms of the reception and the thought of the things that you want to focus on and that you truly want to make an impact with as hopefully becoming DA, are you finding that the constituents down there are very welcoming of these ideas?
Absolutely, yeah. Orange Countyans, and I think so many similar communities, purple communities across the country are willing to have a conversation about criminal justice reform, about how to police in a way that makes us safer. And I've really enjoyed meeting with folks from all over the political spectrum about these issues. And yeah, I think Orange County is ready for a change. Our current district attorney is, the sort of most traditional chest thumping, tough on crime prosecutor that you can imagine. But in his time in office, homicides have reached a 23-year high in Orange County. Violent crime and other crime across the board in Orange County is up. And homelessness is also up by over 40%, showing that the traditional sort of lock them up, throw away the key approach just doesn't work to keep us safe or increase quality of life that we prize so highly here in Orange County.
Now, in terms of taking that less traditional route and going for something more progressive, is there any other agencies that you would work with to accomplish these goals that you're talking about that are less focused on the punitive angle and more on the social rehabilitative angle?
Absolutely, yeah. There are a number of community groups. There are a ton of grassroots community groups in Orange County who are dedicated to changing the paradigm by which we work in Orange County, and a number of national groups. I mean, I had a great conversation the other day with the Innocence Project, for example, who told me, to my surprise and chagrin, that our current district attorney will not let them retest DNA in a number of cases, even though that can lead to exonerations of people who are wrongfully convicted. So I'll be a champion for retesting that type of DNA and a vigorous conviction integrity review unit. We'll work with the Innocence Project and others across the country who can give us good solutions to these issues, as well as the people in the office. I mean, look, we have a lot of great dedicated public servants, prosecutors in our office who want to do the right thing, and I think are interested in looking at the modern data and social science that tells us really clearly, not just that the system is broken in some fundamental ways, but it gives us a lot of hope too about how we can fix things and do things better.
And so if you were elected into this position and you had something that you could do on day one, what would it be?
Two things I'll mention. Ending the prosecution of children as adults. This is something that just doesn't make us safer. It's never been shown to make us safer. When children are locked up with adults, unsurprisingly to any of us who know anything about the criminal justice system, they're abused and they learn from them. And when they get out, they lash out. And studies tell us so clearly that the recidivism rates for those children is much higher than it is for their peers who go through the juvenile justice system. Again, unsurprisingly, because those kids are given the developmental tools they need to develop from children into adults. Second, ending the death penalty, which is a broken system in and of itself. Putting the moral issues of it all aside, it just has never been shown to deter crime, and is a sentence that will never be carried out, given the moratorium on executions in California, and the fact that public sentiment is changing on these issues. But what concerns me most is that it drags survivors and victims through decades of appeals for a sentence that's never going to be carried out. So those are two things we can do on day one to really start changing the dynamic and stop siphoning funds away from the things that we know reduce crime.
Yeah, it does sound like you have quite the agenda lined up if that's what you would like to do on day one. And so definitely that is fantastic, as change is something that needs to be had. And we have less than a minute left now, but I would love for you to be able to share with our viewers where they can find more about your campaign, if there's an opportunity to donate, and how they can uplift you.
Oh, thanks, Adrian. I really appreciate that. Go to PeteHardin.com. You'll find everything you need there. You can link to our social media. In the upper right-hand corner is the contribution button. And yeah, I'd be incredibly grateful. There's a bit about my background there and my positions on the issues. And please don't hesitate to reach out. I love having conversations about these issues, and it helps me develop as a candidate as well. So thank you.
Fantastic. And for those who do not know when the election is, can you let people know where they can go and when?
Yeah, great question. So ballots hit our mailboxes here in Orange County and across California in 24 days, and 1 month later is when voting ends. So June 7 is election day and when voting ends. You should have your ballot by the Monday after Mother's Day, so keep an eye out.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Pete Hardin. He happens to be running for Orange County District Attorney's Office.
Great to be with you, Adrian. Thank you.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.